Hello, I'm Janet Tarantino, the author of Dying to See, Revelations about God, Jesus, Our Pathways, and the Nature of the Soul. And I'd like to welcome you today to my YouTube channel called Exploring Everything Spiritual. Please click the like button below and feel free to share any video on my YouTube channel. And don't forget to like and subscribe below to see future amazing videos about everything spiritual. Our guest today is Dr. Lotte. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Lotte Valentin is an N.M.D, an author, an evidential medium, a spiritual educator, and an international keynote speaker. She teaches and offers several different spiritual workshops, as well as offering one-on-one sessions for mediumship, ancestral healing, and as a medical intuitive. I like that one really a lot. She has experienced 2 out-of-body near-death experiences, which we refer to as NDEs, which led her to start attending medical school at the age of 54. Dr. Lotte also hosts her own podcast to help people create a path to healing their own life physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and to bridge the gap between science and soul. Her podcast is called Dr. Lotte, Science with Soul. I think that's beautiful. And she lives in Phoenix, Arizona, where she operates the Center of Integrative Medicine, as well as her spiritual center called Divine Spiritual Essence. She's very divine. You'll see. You can see. Welcome, Dr. Lotte. I'm delighted to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me as a guest today.
Sure. I think, first of all, we should think about explaining what the N.M.D stands for so they know exactly what you're all about. And I look forward to hearing more.
Yeah, so an N.M.D is a naturopathic medical doctor. And you actually have to go to medical school to become an N.M.D. And the first 2 years in medical school are very similar to a traditional M.D degree because it's the basic sciences. And then the second 2 years is a little bit different because we also learn about acupuncture, homeopathy, botanical medicine. So there's more of an emphasis on that. Now we still study pharmaceuticals, of course, because we also prescribe pharmaceuticals. We actually have a couple of hours more of pharmaceuticals than a traditional MD because we also have to understand the interaction between taking a pharmaceutical and, for example, prescribing a botanical medicine or an herb. So it's a little bit different focus. A naturopathic physician tends to go to the bottom. The doctor wants to find the root cause of what is it that is actually causing the symptoms for this patient, versus a traditional medical approach is more, you have the symptoms, you have a stomach ache or you have a headache, and then you know that the different types of prescription medications go along with these different types of symptoms. So a naturopathic physician works more on trying to resolve that problem that the patient is experiencing. So it's a little bit of a different approach to how we treat a patient. But then there's also different laws in different states. So not all states in the United States are licensed for naturopathic medicine. So if you live in an unlicensed state, and they call themselves a naturopathic doctor, they might only have done an online study and they actually never went to medical school. So I think about half of the states now are licensed. So this is the problem that the acupuncturists and chiropractic physicians once faced of not being part of the insurance company and all that. So that is the same thing now that's happening to naturopathic physicians. And each year, more and more states are getting licensed, and I hope soon that we will see all the states being licensed, because it is a really important asset to healing somebody, to have different kind of approaches to different problems, as each patient is very unique and each patient requires a specific protocol to heal. You could have the same disease showing up in different patients, but each patient really requires a different healing modality in order to heal that. So it's a fantastic profession.
Oh, great. Now, you were an atheist before your near-death experience, I understand. Can you explain what happened during your NDEs and how it changed your life?
Right. So I was a complete atheist. So I actually grew up in Sweden, which is in the Northern Europe. It's in Scandinavia. So right underneath the North Pole. My father was a general practitioner, traditional N.D. My mom was a hospital floor administrator. So I grew up with science, and I did not believe in anything that was spiritual. So if you could not hear it, see it, smell it, taste it, touch it, as far as I was concerned, it did not exist. It was, and when you die, everything just goes black and that's it. It's over, right? So no belief whatsoever. And then after I had my third child, about 10 days later, after I gave birth, it was a natural birth, no drugs. It was, a pretty easy birth, except for the fact that she was born in between a 7.2 and a 7.4 earthquake. So my labor actually stopped. I was contracting about 2 or 3 minutes apart. And that earthquake hit. I literally thought I was going to die. And it was one of the moments in my life when I thought that I was going to die. And the nurses and everybody, the staff, the personnel in the hospital were just hanging over me on the table, because if they hadn't, I would literally have levitated off, or they would have fallen down, because it shook that bad. We lost all the power in the hospital, and my labor stopped, because when you're running from the tiger in the jungle and you're giving birth, you're going to stop that labor because you're going to save your life first. So that can happen even if you're in the middle of labor. So my labor stopped. And after about half an hour or so, it kicked back in, and my daughter was born. And then we had the 7, so that was the 7.4. Then we had the 7.2 and the aftershock. And it was finally time for me to hold the baby. And they put the baby on my chest, and I started having this severe pain. And I was just like arching backwards and screaming, "Take the baby, take the baby." And I couldn't even hold on to her anymore because the pain was so intense. And then they started, I started hemorrhaging, and this mountain of blood clots came out. And more nurses came in, and they were massaging up my uterus. And the entire hospital is now in a blackout. We're running on generators, and we're having aftershocks, like every other minute. The hospital is shaking, and I'm bleeding. And they managed to calm it down. They gave me some IV, and they kept me an extra night for observation. And the uterus just kept contracting, every minute, because they gave me like Pitocin to contract that uterus, to keep squeezing everything out. And after a day or so, I was sent home, and I kept having these severe pains. And it was like, imagine if somebody takes a fist and puts it inside your abdomen and then pushes down on your vagina. So it was like a feeling like a bowling ball on the inside of my vagina, and the pressure was so great, and it would hurt so much. I would just have to sit down, because just standing up was just so painful. And after 10 days, I started hemorrhaging, and a blood clot the size of a baby's head came out of me. And I looked in that toilet, and I said, it was one of those moments when something is really, really wrong. And you get that cold sweat. And I was at the park. My friends were holding a baby shower for me, because I had 2 boys that were now 6 and 3.5. And then my newborn baby, who was a girl. So they were going to give me all the girl stuff. And I went to my friend, and I said, something is really wrong. I had this huge blood clot come out. And I quickly put the kids in the car, drove home. My parents were visiting from Sweden to help with the birth and everything. And they called my husband, and we went to the ER. So I get to the ER, and they call in the doctor, they do a manual observation, and they say, well, there's not much blood coming out right now. And they kept me there for 2 or 3 hours. And then they said, okay, well, it could just have been a second lining that came out, and that sometimes happens. So we're going to send you home. No blood work, no ultrasound. This is 1992. So thank the Lord that things have changed since then. And I think they're a little bit more thorough today. So they sent me on my way. And then the next evening, we're having dinner, and I go to the bathroom thinking I'm just going to, urinate. And I sit on the toilet, and the same thing happens again. Another large blood clot the size of a baby's head just drops into the toilet. So I yell for my parents, my husband, come here, help, I'm bleeding again. And they lie down. So I lie down on the bed, they put towels under me. My husband calls the hospital and said, what should we do? Should we come back? Because we had been there yesterday, but if they were just going to send me home, then what was the point? So as my husband is on the phone, I stop bleeding, and it's pretty late at night. It's like maybe 9 o'clock at night or so. So we decide that I'm going to see the doctor in Huntington Beach in California, which is where we lived at the time, the next morning at 10 o'clock. So the next morning, I go to the doctor. He does a manual examination. I tell him what has happened. And well, not much is happening now. It's just a trickle of blood. Could have been a second lining coming out. So I'm sent on my way. Again, no blood work, no ultrasound, nothing to check, is there an infection? What's going on? Why is this woman bleeding? So they send me on my way. And then Friday evening, same day, so I've been to the doctor, same thing happens again. I go to the bathroom, another large blood clot drops into the toilet. So at this point, we said, okay, this is the third time now. So let's, go back to the hospital and see and tell them what's going on, because something is definitely wrong. So we go back to the hospital, and they come in, they do a manual examination. Well, not much is happening now, just a trickle of blood. Well, we're just going to keep you for observation for, 2 or 3 hours. We'll see what happens. They close the door, and there I am, lying in a room, no bell to ring, no help, just, lying in a room in the ER. And after about an hour or so, I finally start bleeding. That's what I'm thinking. Oh, thank the Lord, I'm bleeding again. And so I'm bleeding quite a bit. And I'm just thinking, well, at least I'm bleeding in the ER, right? I'm not thinking anything is going to go wrong. I'm just thinking they're going to finally figure out that something is wrong with me, and then they can fix it. So I'm lying there, and then just at a random, this nurse opens the door to check on me. And she looks at me, and lying on the bed, literally in the pool of my own blood. All the papers underneath me are just, soaked with blood. And her jaw just drops. It's like, oh, that horror on the face. Mm-hmm. And when you know that something is really wrong with me, because you can see it on their face. And I hear the call on the loudspeaker, OBGYN stat to the ER. OBGYN stat to the ER. And I'm just thinking, wow, finally, they're going to figure out something's wrong with me. So this older physician comes, literally running into my room with a younger physician, which is probably the resident in training. And I'm just thinking, oh, I'm so happy they sent an older doctor. At least he'll figure out what's wrong with me. And literally, he did know, because he's the one who saved my life. And so they start by doing a manual examination. So they look, and while they're looking, another large blood clot comes out right when they're examining me. And I try to sit up and tell them. So I say, I don't feel too good. And right away, the older physician knew what was wrong. So he just pushed me back onto the bed, and they started tipping it. So if my head is up here, they would tip it. So my head would go down, my legs would go out, and the little blood that I had left would go into my vital organs, my heart, and my brain to, help with the oxygen flow. And as they're tipping the bed down, I have a nurse on my right, a nurse on my left, and the nurse on my left is trying to place an IV, and the nurse on my right is quoting my blood pressure. And I'm just thinking, what's taking them so long? Why can't she get that IV in? But, I didn't know anything then, but if you are going into shock, right, your veins collapse. And so it's really hard to get an IV in because your veins are collapsing. So that is why when you go to the hospital now, they now almost always place an IV, and they'll just give you, fluids, because that IV, if something goes wrong, they have access to your IV and they can just put medications in very, very quickly. But back then they didn't do this. I guess it wasn't the protocol back then. So she is working really hard to try to get the IV in, and the nurse on my right is quoting my blood pressure. And as I'm lying on the bed, it feels like I'm just falling. Like, imagine jumping out of an airplane without a parachute, or being in an elevator that lost the cables and is just plummeting through the chute. It's just a feeling of free fall. And I just felt like I was falling rapidly. And the nurse on my right, she yells 50/15. And that was my blood pressure. So 60/20, you no longer have a blood pressure that can support your heartbeat. So I'm already below that. And it was really shortly after that I realized that I was dying. And this was such a different feeling, first of all, from, for example, being in that earthquake, giving birth, when I thought I was going to die, right? Thinking, oh my gosh, this is it, I'm going to die, being close in an accident, coming close to death, like by being in an accident. But this was different because I knew that I was dying. And being the atheist that I was, what did I do? I prayed to God to save my life. Don't you love this? The atheist that I was, that is all that I had left. There was nothing else left for me to do than to pray to God to save my life. And I pleaded with God. I said, please let me live. I have 3 children under the age of 6. They need a mother. And it was shortly after that my body just got sucked out. Or I shouldn't say my body got sucked out. I got sucked out of my body. So my spirit, or my soul, however you want to refer to that, got sucked out of my body. And it's at this point, it is as if I'm floating about, I would say 3 or 4 feet above my body. But I never turned around. You hear stories about how people see themselves. I have no memory of turning around, but there was a feeling of just unconditional love and peace on the other side. And I knew that my first thought was, how can I still be me when I'm outside my body? This is not supposed to happen, right? Because I thought that you die and then that's it. It's black, you're gone. But here I was outside my body. I could still think, I could still see things. I was aware of everything. But not only was I aware of the physical world, I was aware that there was no time on the other side. There was no separation of past, present, and future. It was as if I had access to all time, past, present, and future. There was no division between it. And there was also a feeling that when I was outside my body, it was as if I was attached to it. I knew that this spirit soul of me lived down there in that body while I was having this earthly experience. And it was shortly after that I just got sucked back in. And I always say the best description I have is for those who have seen the Santa Claus movie with Tim Allen, the original one, when he goes through the chimney and he just gets like sucked down. It was like that. It was like a giant vacuum hose just going, and I just got sucked back in. And the thing is that it happens so quickly. And I've had people ask me, like, from which point did you exit your body? Was it from the chest? Was it from the crown? honestly, I have no idea, because 1 second I was inside and the next second I was outside. And I don't have no idea how my spirit gets in and out of that body. It was just a feeling of you get sucked out and then you get sucked back in. And it was after this experience that even the next day, and they kept me for observation for many reasons. And it was the next day, my sister-in-law had just recently passed away from lung cancer. And as I'm in the hospital room the next day, I can hear my sister-in-law, and I know she's up in the left-hand corner of the ceiling. And she said, "You're going to be okay." And I thought I was nuts. First of all, I had left my body. I didn't believe in any of these things. Now I'm hearing spirits and I'm thinking that I'm communicating with my sister-in-law who passed away. And I literally thought, maybe I'm just nuts. Maybe this just happens in your brain. I could not put it all together. I was petrified of sharing what I had experienced. And that next day, a very kind nurse came in and she said, "Oh, did you experience any unusual events or anything like that?" Obviously, she was very familiar with near-death experiences, but I had never heard of this. And I just said, nope, nothing special. Because I was afraid. I thought, oh my gosh, if I tell them what I experienced, they're going to send me to the mental ward and lock me up. I need to get back home and take care of my kids and heal from this experience. And then what happened is there was a lot of electrical interference. All my watches stopped, televisions turned on when I walked by them. And I've learned since then that this is a common phenomenon with people who have these types of near-death experiences, that you get this electrical issues happening afterwards.
Uh-huh.
And it took me 12 years to make my watch take a whole year. And it was as if every year, a year out, my watch ticked about a month. After 2 years, it ticked 2 months. And that took 12 years. And at 12 years, I said, okay, that's it, I'm healed. But what happened afterwards is that I got really sick, which also makes more sense to me now. And I had something called bone marrow suppression. So you have, you don't clot very well. So ITP, many people might be familiar with ITP, idiopathic thrombocytopenia. And so that's part of what I had. And you don't have any immune system because your blood cells are all suppressed. So you're anemic, your immune system is suppressed. You're bruising very easily because you're not clotting properly, because all your blood cells are reduced. And this took about 6 years until I could even walk through a grocery store. And I literally sat in a rocking chair for 9 months after my first near-death experience. And 2 years out, I was still sick. And if I put my knee on the floor to tie my children's shoes, I would get a bruise on my knee. The size, like covering whatever had touched the ground, I would just get a bruise from putting pressure on it. So that was how poor my clotting was. And now that I went to medical school, I know how serious that was. So it is a long, crazy story, but we had no insurance at the time. That first year, because the company that my husband was working for got bought, and then we would have to pay COBRA, which was sky high for a family of 5 people, 3 children, 2 adults. And I said, well, just go with it. I'm getting better. It's going to be okay. And literally, it took a year until my husband landed an equivalent position that he had when the company that he worked for got bought. So we just kept postponing it. I said, no, I'm getting better. So we ended up not having insurance that whole year. Well, 6 months out, we all got pneumonia and we didn't have insurance. So we all went to a walk-in clinic. Yeah, no, the year from what. And so everybody gets on antibiotics. Everybody got antibiotics except the baby. She was still fine, which is typical, right? And everybody got better except for me. I just kept getting sicker and sicker. And I did not know yet that I was heading into bone marrow suppression. And I went back to the walk-in clinic and they said, weren't you just here? And I said, yeah, but I'm getting sicker. And they pricked my blood. And then they came back in and they said, do you have leukemia or AIDS? Because you have no immune system. And I said, well, I hope I don't have either. So that explains, so that was the beginning of it. And then I got antibiotics, and they said, you have to go to the ER, you have to go to the ER now. And I said, no, I am not going to the ER. I was so traumatized from my first near-death experience. And then I started bruising. I bumped into the baby's changing table, and this was in May. So this was 11 months later. And something that would give you, the size of a nickel bruise, I had a bruise that was this big. It spanned my entire hip area, and it was purple and red. And I started to get pneumonia again. And nobody gets pneumonia in May. I mean, the weather is beautiful. It's Huntington Beach, California, right? 70s, 80s degrees. So I go to the doctor, and he is freaking out. He's thinking that my husband must be beating me and I'm not telling the truth. I brought my children with me because my husband was at work, and he literally rips the shirts up on my children, just check them for bruises. Oh, no. And I told him, hey, I'm telling you the truth. My father was a doctor. I know this is bad. This is why I'm here. But we're getting insurance in 1 month. My husband is finally at the position in a new company that have great insurance. If you do lab work on me now, I'm never going to get insurance because I'm going to have a pre-existing condition. And I said, the truth is, I'm getting better. As bad as this looks, I'm actually getting better because I put my children in the car and drove myself here. And of course, as a physician, you're still going to give the patient all the lab work and all that, which I then ripped up, disposed of in the garbage can in the walking out, because I was petrified my husband was going to see it because he would make me do it, right? Being the good spouse. And I was so afraid my oldest child, who is now almost 7, was going to tell his dad that I had thrown him away. So my child says, Mom, weren't you supposed to do those? And I said, oh, no, he just meant that I could do it if I wanted to do them. So, luckily he did not tell on me. So my husband never found out. And then another year went by, and I'm just still struggling, and this is happening. The bruises got, smaller, but still I would get a bruise putting my knee on the floor and feeling faint. I had, difficulty going to the grocery store without passing out. I would have people come up to me asking me if I was going to pass out in the grocery store because I would be that pale, but I was so used to that existence. So this is when my second near-death experience happens. And I would just, have these feelings of passing out because I didn't have any blood in my body. And it took me many years to figure out why I had to have the second experience. And I kind of jokingly say now that it's because I didn't get all the information I needed in the first one. So they're like, let's create a second one to make sure she really understands what her life path is, right? So, and it just happened in the middle of the night. And I would often wake up from just feeling faint. And I would just take my head off the pillow. This was just a routine. My head would just be pounding because not enough blood flow. But this time it was the same thing. I took the head off the pillow, and then that's it. I just got sucked out of my body in a split second. I was out. And because I was always walking that fine line of, putting my head down between my legs and trying, holding on to my soul. And it was this constant fight. It was my daily life of holding on to the soul, saying, no, we're not leaving. We got to stay. Don't leave. And it was just my existence. And so this was just kind of my normal life of, I feel like I'm going to leave again, take the head off the pillow, lie down, except this night it didn't work. And so I just get sucked out. But this time was very, very different. And I just tumbled through darkness. And we hear people talking about the tunnel and the light on the other side. There was no tunnel. It was just darkness. And then I find myself at a place that I call the mid station, because there was this awareness that there were levels below me and levels above me. And I call it the bouncing station, as if you end up at this level, you're going to get sent back. So it's like the bouncing station to bounce you back. Oh, you got here by accident. We're going to send you back. So I get to this place, and of course I don't have a body. It's just my spirit soul body. And I hear this most beautiful music, and I look around and what I see is a little log cabin. And I always laugh at, what we see. Some people see flowers and mountains and their relatives. No, I see a log cabin. So I'm thinking the music must be coming from this log cabin. So I open the door, I look inside. There's nothing there. It's just empty. So then I was like, wow, that's so weird. So I look to my left and I see another log cabin. And I open the door and I look inside and it's just empty. So it's like, wow, this most beautiful music, where is it coming from? But then I become aware of a light. It's almost like the light is coming and it's emanating from behind me. So my spirit body turns around. And what do I see? The most magnificent, widest, brightest light you can ever imagine. It is, and I've looked on the internet to see if there's any way I could possibly find something that would resemble that. But it's when you take a picture into the sun and it's very, very white, but it's just everywhere. It just extends beyond what you can even comprehend. And you're enveloped in this light. But in the light, there were an outline of angels. And it was the angels that sang this beautiful music. And why am I seeing angels? I don't even believe in angels, but that is what I saw. And when I'm in this light, I also know that I am with God source or higher power source. I don't really care what people call it because it is the highest power of love and source. And that light is what we are. We come from that light and we return to that light and we carry that light within us because we're part of that light, right? And the music is just, you cannot make this music on the earth plane because it's just more divine and more beautiful than anything you've ever heard on the earth plane. And I try to create this music. We had a Roland synthesizer with like 200 sounds. I could not find any sound that sounded like that music. So then I become aware. So I turn and I become aware of a spirit guide to my right that's communicating with another spirit guide that's diagonally to the left in front of me. And he says to the other spirit guide, what is she doing here? She can't be here. She has to go back. And I say, wait a second. No. How can this be? This is the second time I'm outside my body. This is not supposed to happen because I have still been processing my first near-death experience, thinking maybe it was just in my mind. It must be my brain making this up. When you come close to death, your brain does this thing, right? And it makes up these images. And here I am again, having this experience, being outside my body, fully conscious, fully aware, and experiencing these things. And then I said, wait, how can this be? How can I still be me and be outside of my body? And the spirit guide on the left diagonally in front of me says, well, if I told you, you're not going to remember. As if they have some power over us. But I've heard other people say this too now. It's like they can control what you're supposed to remember. And I always take this as what they showed me is what I was supposed to take in. And that was something for my life path, which I now completely understand it was. And so it is as if I'm standing on the moon and I'm looking down on the earth. But around the earth, I see this kind of diamond-shaped, silvery, glittery fishnet. Because that is what it looked like to me. Because growing up in Scandinavia, in Sweden, there are 24,000 islands outside of Stockholm. And I would spend the summers on one of these islands with no electricity, no running water. And I would row the boat for my grandmother who laid fish nets in the ocean. And we would catch fish for the family to eat. And when she stood up in this rowboat and lifted the net out of the ocean, it would sparkle in the sunlight and it would sort of glitter. And a fishnet has this diamond shape. And that was my best description at the time. And now I know we refer to it as the grid, right? Since the internet came about and we can now see these types of images on the internet. But this is in 1994, so we barely had an internet back then. And so it's like a glittery fishnet that I see around the earth. And then he says, everything on earth is connected to each other, but everything on earth is connected up to this glittery fishnet. And with that lesson, I got sent back to earth. And it has taken me literally a quarter of a century to put that one teaching into perspective and integrate it into my own life. And so how did I end up going to medical school? Well, everything changed, of course. And after these two experiences, I became more and more clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, and claircognizant. And I would be aware of relatives that had passed away before I was even told about the fact. I would wait for, my mom, it took my mom 3 days to call and tell me my uncle passed away. And I told her, yeah, he passed away on Monday. And my mom would just be quiet. And she said, how did you know? And I said, because he was here. And he had come in the middle of the night and I knew he had passed away and I had no idea that he was that close to death. But so this is how it all started. And I would become more clairvoyant and clairaudient and clairsentient as time passed. And 12 years out, when I had declared myself as healed, I received messages from the spirit world. And I was in my living room and I could sense the spirit in the room, but I could not see the spirit. And he said, I had to become a naturopathic doctor. And I had just looked on the internet and I said, wow, this is such a cool degree. Oh my gosh, it's a real medical school. I can't do that. I'm way too old, way too risky. I mean, going to medical school, there's no guarantee I'm going to get in. I would have to do all the prereqs, all the chemistry, organic chemistry, physics and math and all that, because I was a business major as an undergrad. So I said, that's out of the question. I'm not going to do that. I'll find something else. Because my kids were now getting into their teens and I was thinking of going back to, rejoining the workforce. And so here's the spirit guide in my living room saying, you have to become a naturopathic doctor. You have to integrate East and West. You have to bring healing and messages to the people. And you are to write 2 books. No, wait, 3. And literally, I enrolled in prereq medical school classes within a week. I just knew that I have to do this. And this is my path in order to help other people. So I finished all the prereqs, which took a couple of years because I had to actually start with high school biology because I didn't even have the high school qualifications because I went to high school in Sweden and it's very different. I was a business major and a language major in high school, so I didn't study the sciences in high school. So I had to take advanced placement biology. I had to take beginning math classes to even get into the prereqs. So it was a year or 2 of trying to get to my prereq classes. I had to do all the high school kind of classes first. So I really had to start from the beginning, and then finished all of those, and then applied to medical school, and somehow was accepted. So I went to medical school when I was 54, graduated when I was 58, which was in 2016. And then did, like a 2-year kind of residency. We don't really have residencies in naturopathic medicine yet because we don't have enough physicians, and it's not, we don't have a license in all 50 states yet. So it's kind of an optional thing to do a residency. So I did that. I worked in a family clinic, a large family clinic for 2 years, and I learned a lot. And then I came back to Phoenix, and in January of 2019, opened up my own practice. And after graduating, I also started studying mediumship, and went to Arthur Findlay College in England, which is the best college, I guess, in the world. The people come from all over the world to study mediumship there. It's the School of Psychic Sciences. And I had no idea that I was going to actually become a medium and actually work with it. I was just drawn to it because I had received so many messages about, my life or about other people, dying or whatever through this whole time, and going to medical school and just blindly knowing this is what I have to do. And then I studied there, and then I became a medium. So now I work as a medium. I split my time between my spiritual work and working as a physician.
So why do you think that, you've had a lot of hurdles to go over during life. So why do you think that we go through all these hardships and lessons?
I think that, well, if we sat on a beach sipping pina coladas our whole life, we wouldn't really learn anything. It sounds nice, but the truth is that it is from our hardships that we learn. It is from the hardships that our soul grows. It is, when we go through these darker periods in our life, that darkness is what holds the power to the creativity and transformation that happens to that soul when you're going through that dark feeling of being down in the trenches. Like I always say, if you feel like you're going through this really muddy field and you get mud up to your knees, there's always a sunny road on the other side, a dry, sunny road. And it's just a matter of keep walking, because eventually, these darker times in our life are all transient. And I think we literally incarnate to have certain lessons in our life, because that's how our soul grows. And if you believe in reincarnation, then what we learned in each of these lives are then carried with us to the next life in our Akashic records, or whatever you want to call these things, and the little atoms that consist of our spirit, right? And we carry these memories come with us from life to life. And so for each journey that we take, we learn things, we grow, our soul grows. And you can just tell when you meet someone, or you see a child and you say, wow, that child has such an old soul, right? And we use these expressions, and then still people don't always, think about that the expression actually then says that that person lived once before.
Well, so, I don't think most people want to go back.
Yeah.
I think that's why they don't want to accept it. So.
Right. Yeah. That's what I always think. If you're going through a dark time, I'm always thinking, I'm going to solve this problem, because I am not doing this again in my next life. Yeah. Right. So it kind of propels you on.
Yeah. So what are the top 3 lessons that you've learned from all these experiences?
I would say for number 1 would be that life is eternal, and it's not at all what I thought in the beginning, my first half of my life, when I thought that's it, you die and you're gone. Life really is eternal. I would say life is all about love, and we are love and light, literally. And we are all connected. We're all one in the end. And the importance of being kind to other people, and listen to other people, especially, coming out of last year, it was so much hate and things like that on the internet. People divided between their political views, instead of learning to respect each other's views and saying, okay, I know you're thinking differently about this than I am. Let me hear why you're thinking so, and try to learn from each other's, why we hold different views. But, because everything in the end is love, because we're all connected. We're all one in the end. So I would say those are the top 3.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with we're love. Yeah.
Right.
Sure. So, and you, I understand you have courses and workshops that you mentioned, that I mentioned previously, and one-on-ones too. Can you tell a little about what you have to offer?
Yeah. So I have 2 websites. One is called Dr. Lotte, DRLOTTE.com. And you can go between the 2 websites. So if you forget divinespiritualessence.com, then you can always go to drlotte.com and just connect over, because they're linked together. And they're just separate because I work, when I work spiritually, I don't work under my medical license. And when I work as a physician, of course, I work under a license. So it's very different. So I either work as a physician, or if I work spiritually, then I have different kinds of sessions. One is called Medical Intuitive and Wellness, and we work more intuitively. And also it can provide a lot of information for people about, because they get to pick my brain too medically, but I'm not giving medical advice. It's more on a spiritual component, and I will have them sign a release form so they understand that I'm not working as a physician when I work spiritually in that sense. Then I also do something called Ancestral Healing, and I studied with Mark Boleyn, who wrote the book It Didn't Start With You. And it is fascinating because we are all interconnected, but we don't just inherit, the physical features of our parents or certain diseases from our parents. We also inherit a spiritual, emotional component. And now they're even starting to show that the epigenetics, which is kind of like, think of it like the software that runs your computer. It's the software that runs your genes. We inherit these things from our parents and ancestors as well. And they now even have research showing that people who survived the Holocaust, their offspring, so for example, the grandchild of the grandfather who survived the concentration camps, she might have anxiety every time she sees a man in uniform, but she has never had a problem. Nobody she knows is working or in the military or police or anything like that. So there is a connection there of inherited trauma of seeing a man in a uniform and having anxiety about that because her grandfather had that experience over and over. So these types of events transfer down, and I call it's transferred through the DNA because we can already prove that. But it's also transferred through that invisible grid because we are connected, emotionally, spiritually, to our parents, to our grandparents, uncles and aunts, and everybody that really came before us. And we often don't know that we are repeating a pattern that, that the parents had or that the grandfather had. And it's fascinating and it's very interesting. And I love working with people and help them solve these things. And many times, if people don't remember anything, and let's say that has to do with a parent and the parent is in the spirit world, many times the spirit world comes in and helps us resolve the trauma, which is just so beautiful. And then I do sessions called Wholehearted Sessions, and that is working with the spirit world. So I work as a medium or I work psychically, many times both. I also work, doing shamanic journeying with people. And the Wholehearted session really can go pretty much anywhere. So many times we have the spirit world come in, but the client might just be looking for guidance and, saying, I'm looking for guidance. And that's all I get. And then I'll say, oh, I see you as a counselor. You have a degree in counseling and blah, blah, blah. And things just, come out. So I love working, with all of these different things because it's just helping people find their own path and giving other people guidance. So, and then I also teach classes. So I have a couple of pre-recorded classes.
What kind of classes?
Yes. So one is on ancestral healing, and I taught that for acoustic health and quantum conversations. So if you go to my website, Divine Spiritual Essence, there's just a link into that, Ancestral Healing. And you will get a lot of information on that. And that's actually very inexpensive. It's like $33, I think. So, and it's a great class. It will give you a lot of ideas of how to think about ancestral trauma. So it's really, level one. There's, if there were 10 levels to this, but it helps you understand on how to think about a problem that you may be experiencing. And then I have another course that's called Awaken Your Divine Potential. And that's to help people become more intuitive. I talk about different ways of meditating and teaching people how to meditate and how to raise their own frequency so that they can start, tuning into their own spirit guides. We talk about, there's 3 different downloads. You get like a link into, you can just watch it online. And you will have the link for a good 6 months. You can just watch it over, do the meditations over, and just learn how to connect with the spirit world. How do I connect with my spirit guides, power animals, and all these different things, just to help other people kind of like bring them to that level so that they understand how divine and intuitive we all are, because we all have this power within us. And you can also go to my podcast, Dr. Lotte, Science with Soul, and there is a pre-recorded, like a free lecture, an introductory lecture to Awaken Your Divine Potential on my podcast. And I also taught this class for Acoustic Health, so they also have that on their website, and I have it on my website as well. So so a lot of different things.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yes.
Absolutely fantastic. So let's get to your book, Menopause, The Journey of My Soul. Can you tell me why someone should read your book? Obviously, there's a lot.
So med school after menopause, The Journey of My Soul.
Oh, I see.
And I wrote the book. I chose that title because literally the spirit world told me that was the title of the book. And it's to help inspire other people, particularly women that may feel their life is over because now they're 40 or 50 years old, and we're starting to hit menopause and my life is over now. No, it's not over. I went to med school after menopause. If I can do that, you can change your life too. And that is what the title means. It's to inspire you to know that even if you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, it doesn't matter, because life is not over yet. If you are 50, you have only lived half of your adult life, because you weren't an adult until you were 20. And you're probably going to be 80, so you're only halfway. So you have to think about it that way. And it's to inspire people. It's really about transformation, healing, and spirituality. And I tell many different stories. My NDEs are in there, many other funny stories and journeys through my life. And then it's about a chapter, 1 or 2 chapters that talks about what is it like to find yourself in med school at my age, 54, with, when the average age is, 30 or 35. But if I could do it, you guys can do it. So don't ever give up hope on yourselves. And after each chapter, I have a short exercise that you can incorporate into your life. And it's to help bring that transformation into your life so that you can find yourself and find your own path, find your own intuitive strength and abilities by reading my book, and just develop that in yourselves and start trusting that. And that is what the book is about.
That's awesome. And I agree with life isn't over. I mean, my life was changed too, because I was harder to get the message across than you, because I had the 3 near-death experiences. And I never thought I'd be talking about it, and never thought I'd be writing a book. And at my age, I'm getting there. So,
Right.
but it's not over. Yeah. Not over till you accept it. So we don't need to accept it.
Absolutely.
It's what we can do with our lives. Mm-hmm. So, and you said teaching people to become psychic mediums that are in there too. Yes, we do. Everybody has that. And what do you think about contracts?
I think that personally, I think we have contracts. We signed up for something in this life. Mm-hmm. And I know we're drawn to a close, but I'm going to tell you a short, funny story. And it is the first time I went to Arthur Findlay College. And I had only been working as a doctor for 6 months, because this is in the spring of 2017. I took my boards in August of 2016. I got licensed in October of 2016. So I'm literally 6 months into my residency. And it's the first time I'm going to Arthur Findlay College to study mediumship. And I get there a day early because, it's like an 8 or 9 hour time difference to England. And I'm staying in this little hotel out in the countryside, because Arthur Findlay College is about an hour to an hour and a half north of London. So it's out about, more out in the countryside. And I'm sitting in this room and I'm just jet lagged, and I'm thinking I should just watch some, Netflix or something. And the only thing I could find was this show called like Brain Games or Brain Teasers or Brain Games, something like that. I literally watched it for 6 hours. And the whole time I kept thinking, oh my brain is going to turn into mush now. I'm out of medical school. I got to stimulate my brain cells. And my mom, who passed away in her 80s, had dementia in her old age. And I kept thinking, I don't want to get Alzheimer's. I don't want to get dementia. I got to keep doing this, brain teasers, brain games to keep my brain active. So then the next day I go to Arthur Findlay College, and about the third day when I was there, I had my first professional reading from a medium, from one of my teachers. And she said, oh, I have your mother here. And she said, oh, your mother tells me that you're writing a book. And I said, nobody knows this. I had started the outline for med school after menopause. And I said, well, yes, I am. And she said, your mother is telling me that you are to write 2 books. No, wait, 3. The exact same message I had received back in my living room. And then she says, oh, your mother is also telling me that you don't have to watch all those brain games on television because you're not going to get dementia and Alzheimer's. You're going to die from something else. And it was at that point, I think it really sunk into me that we obviously have some kind of contracts because the spirit world already knows how I'm going to die. And so I always tell my patients that this story when they worry about, my dad had, colon cancer, or my mom died of a heart attack, and they're worried that they're going to die of the same thing. And I tell them this story because it teaches you to not live in fear. We carry that fear because we saw our own parents suffer, and we don't want to get the same thing. We know that there are genetic, components, and that we might be more likely to get this disease because they had it, right? But the truth is, we probably already incarnated for something else. And here you go through your whole life worrying you're going to have that heart attack, or worrying you're going to get colon cancer, when in fact you're going to die from a bee sting of an allergic reaction in the restaurant. See what I'm saying? There's so many ways you can die, right? So don't worry about how you're going to die, because we most likely have contracts that, we're not aware of.
Yeah. I had that in mind. I had a contract with my son and my daughter for, and actually Bob, my boyfriend, I had a contract with him too. So yes, I totally agree with contracts. Everything that you said, I've agreed to.
Yeah.
So your experiences are mind blowing, and but it's through life experiences like you've had and like I've had and other people have had that the rest of the world can learn. So we're really grateful. And I know, looking back now, I'm very grateful for my experience having happened, even though they made my world so messy at the time. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell the audience how to reach out to you? You've already mentioned your websites, right?
Yes. So you can find me at Dr. Lotte, DRLOTTE.com, drlotte.com. And from there, you can link into Divine, DIVINE, not DE, DIVI, Divine Spiritual Essence.com. And on the Divine Spiritual Essence is where you'll find my workshops, my teachings, and all that. And they're linked, so you can go between Dr. Lotte and the other one. And you can also, you can find all the different interviews and things that I've done on, I think those are drlotte.com. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at dr.Lotte Valentin, but there's no E on the end because it is the Swedish spelling of the name Valentine. So Valentine's Day in Sweden is spelled like my name. It doesn't have an E on it. So it's dr.Lotte Valentin. And that's Facebook and Instagram.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I thank you very much for being here today. And for my viewers, I will put her contact information down below in the description area, so that it's easily accessible for you. And I would also like to remind everybody, when you read Dr. Lotte's books, and mine, if you do that too, don't forget to rate the books, because that does give our books a better standing in the mix of the other books. So people quite often forget that, and it is very helpful. So as we head out today, though, I want to ask you to think about life in a different way. Think of it as the biggest adventure, and head out your door with a sense of wonder on where you're going to be guided, and what you're going to be shown, and whose paths will cross with you this day that you're supposed to work with in some way. Maybe they're there to help you, or you're there to help them. But it is absolutely the most magnificent mystical adventure that you ever have. So don't forget to subscribe and like below, and goodbye, everybody.